Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wizard101 video. It's been so long since I've said that. I'm back. I have the face cam. You may notice the background's gone. I took that down months ago. You may notice I lost a slight amount of weight. I've lost like 30 pounds since the last time I did a face cam video. Yeah, we're back. You may be wondering, Noah, where's the Novus series? Why did it disappear suddenly? It's really because the drop rate and the changes to the last fight completely killed my desire to play Novus. Once they buff the drop rate, add the pity system back, you can probably be willing to bet to see a few more streams on Novus and kind of what's happening, and I'm going to finish uploading my stream highlights of it. I promise you guys that once that happens. Now you may be wondering, related to the video, Noah, why are you ranking the worlds again? Haven't you done this like 100,000 times? Like, why are you here? Yes, but I would like to say, I think I'd like to make it a tradition, or it's been a tradition kind of. I like to rank the worlds like once a year because my opinions do very much change. If you look up Kaiser Noah ranking videos, okay, don't look up Kaiser Noah ranking videos. That's going to be way too many. Look up Kaiser Noah ranking world videos, very different, and you will find a few different ones, probably about once a year. I think this is probably going to be about my fourth one, maybe. Now, the reason why I like to do these is because my opinions of the worlds change over time, and they change drastically. Every time I do a world, I have a different opinion of it. So before we get into this video, I want you to say your favorite world and your least favorite world in the comments below. I think that's cool for interaction. If you see someone else who agrees with your opinion or has the same as you, leave a like, maybe comment, oh hey, that's the same as me. Or if you find a choice that you don't understand, maybe ask them, why do you think that? I think it's really cool to get that discussion started. But without further ado, let's get into it. So starting with Wizard City, this is firmly a meh for me. This is the complete middle ground. And the reason for that is Wizard City is not a good world. It is not a bad world. It introduces you to the game. I would say it would be up here if it was the old Wizard City, but I think the new Wizard City is lesser in quite a few ways. The Cyclops Lane quest line is much worse. The Firecat Alley side quest is much worse. Even Triton Avenue is slightly worse. It's just not as good as it used to be. But I do think it's still a very middle of the ground. It still has nostalgia to it, just not as much, especially if you go into classic mode. Really good, iconic theme tracks, just a all-around good world for getting started. Krokotopia. Now, Krokotopia used to be a world that was my favorite. If you look at one of my tier lists from a little bit ago, I probably had it up near A or S, but my opinions on redoing it and kind of peeling away the nostalgia have made me realize, no, this world isn't as good as it should be. It has some very fatal flaws to it. First off, it is very, very ugly. It's the old textures of Wizard City, but sand, and it doesn't look good. I still like it because of the nostalgia, and I still think it has a really good vibe to it, but there is some very ugly places. Second off is the fact that this world is kind of short and not very interesting. The quest line isn't super connected to the rest of the arc, in my opinion. Obviously, the Necronomicon and the Order of the Fang stuff is important, and it's not like irrelevant to the plot. It's just not like Marleybone, where you're directly chasing Malastare, or like even Mooshu, where you see the kind of result that Malastare has on the spiral. I think it's fine. It's getting there. It just needs a little bit of tweaking. It's, again, also very short. Next up is Wysteria. Now, Wysteria is a world that I actually really like. I think that if I'm rating it fairly, it's probably in the same tier as Wizard City. I think it's good. It's old, but it is very, very short. I think in terms of aesthetic and fun, it's like up here, but I will say that it is a bit short for my taste, and I would put it on the same level as Wizard City. It's cool, it's interesting, but it's nothing like spectacular, and there isn't even that many side quests to kind of flesh it out, but it's there. Wysteria is very fun. Next up, we have Grizzleheim. Now, Grizzleheim, unfortunately, on this tier list that I'm using only has one entry. It doesn't have Grizzleheim and Wintertusk, which means I cannot split them into two. If I had to split it into two, I would put Grizzleheim probably middle of the road and Wintertusk up at the top. So I'm going to settle for the middle and put this right here. Now, some reasons for that. Grizzleheim is long. It is a little boring in my opinion, and it gives 0 XP, so it doesn't feel like there's a point in doing it. But to counter that, it has some of the best music in the game. It's an all-around good world and really has like good aesthetic. It's just a really great world vibe-wise. The reason why I think that Wintertusk is so much better is it's everything that Grizzleheim is, but more. It's everything good about Grizzleheim, but removing the negatives of it being too long and kind of like a slog to go through, and then also the fact that it gives no XP. That's why I would put it there. I think Grizzleheim is really, really good, and you should give it a chance again if you haven't done it in a while. Next up, we have Marleybone, and this is a world that I see a lot of controversy about that I hadn't in the past. I firmly believe Marleybone is one of the best worlds in Wizard101 for so many reasons, but first let me list the negatives that I've seen people actually talk about it. I've seen people say that they get pulled a lot into battle, which in my opinion just means you're very bad at maneuvering in the game. I have seen a lot of people say this in Wizard101. I haven't been dragged in Marleybone in years. To be fair, I haven't been dragged into battles many times, like just in general, because battles, they're very easy to avoid if you know the AI's pathing and their kind of range. Marleybone's really easy to stick to the outer edge. Now let's talk about the good parts about this world. I would say it has one of the best soundtracks in the entire game. It has an amazing aesthetic. The graphics aren't nearly as dated as you would think they are. It has a really fun storyline with kind of a detective trying to find all the gangs and stuff like that throughout the whole thing, and then finding Meowiarty and finding Malastare. Has some of the most iconic dungeons in the game, like Cassenstein's Lab, Big Ben. It's just all around good. I would say my main issue with Marleybone in this game is that it is very short. Marleybone is the shortest world in the entire game, bar technically Wizard City and Wysteria, but it only takes you about 2 hours to do if you're an experienced player. You can get through it really fast. The actual main longest thing is Big Ben, so do with that as you will. Marleybone is probably my favorite world in the entire game, if I had to put a label on it. Mooshu. Now, Mooshu is a very, very nostalgic world for me. I'm putting it in the second highest tier. I know some people have issues with it, but I do think Mooshu is really nice. I think the music is good, the aesthetic is good, and really the only issue that I have with Mooshu as a whole is after playing Pirate 101's Mooshu, it's almost like disappointing what could have been in terms of how the world looks. Like Pirate 101 in Mooshu is so good. Wizard 101, it's not so much. I don't know what else to say about that. I think its quest line's really good. Not too long, not too short. It's pretty up there. Next is Dragonspyre, and this one I'm also going to put in my second highest tier. I think Dragonspyre is really fun. There's some areas that aren't really fun. I think like Crystal Grove, not very fun. The Forum, not so fun. The Drake Hatchery, it's like mid-tier. But some areas are super nostalgic. Like, I really like the Grand Chasm and the Grand Chasm's Past, one of the best dungeons in the entire game, honestly. I really like the Plaza of Conquest. It's very nostalgic, and I like the bosses that you can spawn there. I believe that's the Plaza of Conquest. The Dragonspyre overall, just really fun, and Malastare is a very, very iconic villain. The real reason why this isn't a best world for me, and I know this is going to sound really strange compared to some other worlds, but Dragonspyre is super ugly. And the reason why that is, it has the graphics of, say, Krokotopia, Mooshu, but it has the aesthetic of a flaming, hunking rock and a desolate wasteland, and that does not work well together. You cannot mix bad graphics with desolate wasteland unless you do it really well. Dragonspyre really tries, but it just doesn't look good in so many places. And I think one way that you can see this is look at Dragonspyre's Past in the Grand Chasm. It looks so good in comparison to the main Dragonspyre area. I think if they redid it, I genuinely think this is the Arc 1 world that needs redoing the most, just because I think it's more important to have a final world than Mooshu, say, redone. This world would be perfect. I think it's really good, and I think the main detractor, in my opinion, would be, first off, there's not very many memorable side quests. In fact, there's barely any side quests in Dragonspyre. And two, it's a little long, a tad long in certain places, but otherwise, fine. Next up, we have Celestia. Celestia is something that I also really enjoy that I used to not enjoy. I would say Celestia is really good. It's not nearly as long as I remember it being. I just did it recently, and I think there's a lot to say about this world. First off, the music is great. The music's always great, I know. I'm being very redundant in that regard. I think the aesthetic is really cool. Astral magic is really fun, and it's genuinely just a solid world. I think it has a really cool story beats and it's really interesting. The only detractions I have for Celestia is that certain areas, like the Crustacean Empire, for example, feel very, very long. The Crustacean Empire takes like an hour to do. It is most of the world. It's like 1/6 of the world, or 1/8 of the total time that you spend in the world is the Crustacean Empire. That's a problem. And then also, I think that Morganth is a bit lame in her reveal in this world. I think she could have a way cooler reveal than she does just with the shark at the end of the Solarium. But that's where I put Celestia. I know, it's different than usual. This is not where I put Celestia in past videos, but I do genuinely think it's really good on Revisit. Next up is Zafaria. Zafaria is a world that I think is very criminally underrated. I think not as many people like it as they should, but I'm not going to put it in this tier. First off, because I think this tier is going to be way too full if every world that I just kind of like is there. But I also think that Zafaria has some issues with it. It's very slow in certain parts, especially the Elephant Graveyard and Drum Jungle. Those drag on way too long. I would say that it's a bit easy because you just get Waterworks gear right before coming here, and it feels a bit easy as a result. And I just genuinely think it could be a little bit more interesting, but I love the African aesthetic. I think it's so good. The music's so good. It's a very good world that a lot of people really don't like. I don't think it's outstanding. I don't think it's one of the best worlds in the game, but I do think it's better than what people give it credit for. Next up is Avalon. Avalon's a firm S tier for me. Avalon is, in my opinion, the best world in the entire game. I think Marleybone's my favorite world. Avalon is the best world. I think its aesthetics and music are perfect to a T. I think the difficulty is the perfect level of difficulty for where your wizard is. It's just hard enough that it gives you a challenge, but not too hard like, say, Azteca or Khrysalis can be. I think it's not too long. It's about 140 quests, if I remember correctly, but I don't think it's too long. I think that it's really good as a world. I think it's one of the best worlds in the entire game. Next up, we have Azteca. You guys know where this is going. Azteca's the worst world in this entire game. You can get through it decently fast if you power quest through it, but that doesn't mean it's good. It's difficult. It has this bad kind of thing it does where it will put two bosses at once against you, which is just really difficult. The world in of itself is just kind of long. This is a world that I do get dragged into battles a few times in. I do think it needs some work there, and it's just not as good. It's very, very long. I have said this many times in the past. If you cut out a section of quests, this entire world becomes so much better. There is a section of quests right after you get through like the cenote area and I think the pyramid in the main area, the 3 points pyramid, I think. There is a quest right after that, a quest that's like 30 quests long, where you need to basically build a boat to Zoltan Dock. I think if they cut this down significantly, this world's pacing becomes much, much better. It really, that part alone drags it to a halt and makes it much worse in my opinion. Even if they did that, I still don't think I would put it higher than this. I do think Azteca's just, it has bad nostalgic, right? Like all of these worlds are nostalgic in a good way. This is nostalgic in a bad way. Give a lot of kids PTSD is my point. Next up is Khrysalis, and now Khrysalis is going one tier above Azteca in my opinion. It's Azteca, but not as bad because it has some interesting things, like it has Devim Whiteheart, which is one of the best characters in the game. Everyone loves Devim. Khrysalis has really cool spells and aesthetic. It definitely does a good final world of an arc really well. The only letdown here is that the Morganth battle is incredibly underwhelming because Morganth is super easy to do nowadays. You just feint every boss, hit with a 7-pip AoE, it's GG. You can do it in 2 rounds if you want to. The rest of the world, not so much. Also, this world suffers from a problem where it gives you way too much XP where you become over leveled, and then you end up being like level 105 when you finish the world, which causes numerous problems later on that I can't even begin to describe. But this is the world you get Malastare gear in. I think it's fun. It's fun in the sense of once you get Malastare gear, it definitely gives you a power spike. I just think Khrysalis needs a little bit of work. It especially needs to cut down some quests. It has 277 quests. That is way too much. To put it into perspective, modern worlds have about 80. Do with that information as you will. Next up is Polaris. Polaris is another best world for me. Polaris has everything. It has an insanely good quest line. a very memorable final fight with the rat. It has really, really cool aesthetics, beautiful music. It introduces the Arcanum. It gives us a power spike with Epic. Polaris is really, really good, and I think a lot of people would agree with me saying it is one of the better worlds in this game. And better off, it is the start of Arc 3, which I personally think is the best arc in Wizard 101, if I had to put a label on it. Next up is Mirage. I love Mirage. I don't think it is the best world in the game, but I do think it is a really, really solid world. I think Mirage has a fun quest line. It has a lot of memorable characters. It has a lot of bad characters, and by that I mean it has Ishtar. Ishtar is the worst character in this entire game, but counter to that, I think Ozymandias is the best character in the entire game. I think the Sultan is really cool. There's a lot more characters in this that are just really, really, really interesting and cool. The Scorpion's fun, and then it also has the kind of whole stake where the spiral's about to blow up because time itself is being crumpled by Grandfather Spider, and you need to stop that. Really fun. I think this world is criminally underrated. This world, in my opinion, is the most underrated world in the entire game. I love Mirage, and I firmly stand by that it's a good world. Next up, you have Empyrea, and Empyrea is a world that I used to very much dislike, but I now have a firm mid opinion on it. I think that Empyrea Part 2 is much better than Empyrea Part 1. It's not nearly as slow as I remember it being, but it has some major issues with it. It is the world where you're going to be getting Dragoon gear. I think the problem is that Empyrea isn't really fun, in my opinion, at least not until the part 2 of Empyrea, but I do think it has a good quest line. I think it's a solid final world for the arc, and it ends pretty well, I would say. I enjoy its ending. I would put it right here. Now we're getting to the hot takes. These new worlds, people have firm opinions on, I think, and I have opinions that are probably a bit different than most people, so let's just cross our fingers and hope I don't offend people too much. Or, you know what? I hope I offend people, because I think it's funny. Karamelle. Easily one of the best worlds in this entire game. I think its quest line is really, really good. It makes very interesting commentary on capitalism, which I think is very ironic for KingsIsle to make. In fact, it is one of the most ironic points that KingsIsle's ever made in their entire lives. I think it's super solid of a world. The aesthetic is very, very good. A lot of people don't like it for the aesthetic. I think the childish aesthetic is the best part of the entire world. I love the candy fun time aesthetic. I think it's really fun. I think every spell in this world is really interesting. I really like Mockenspiel, where you punch people in the face. I just generally like this world. I want to do it again soon, and I hope I get a character there soon, actually, now that I think about it. I think this world is really, really good. This is actually criminally underrated as well. I would say this is the second most underrated world in the entire game, right after Mirage. Next up is Lemuria, and Lemuria for me goes in this tier right here. Now, Lemuria is a mixed bag. A lot of people have the opinion that reusing the assets really drew back on the world. I don't think it did. I think it's really interesting to see certain areas. I think the Dark Forest is one of my favorite areas in any Arc 4 world. For every positive it has, it also has a drawback. For example, I think Heap is the best area in the entire game. I think the Wildlands, or the Wild Jungle, I forget what it's called, is one of the worst areas in the entire game. Like, for every good area it has a bad one as well, and I think it's a mixed bag because of that. But again, I do think the positives outweigh the negatives, and I do think it is a good world, and it's definitely an underrated one, as people don't really like Lemuria. It could move down here. This is a world that's like firmly between this tier and this tier for me. I think it's good. Could use a bit of work in a few places. Finally, we have Novus. Now, this is the part of the video I'm sure a lot of people have been waiting for. People want to know my opinions on Novus. Let's get into it. Purely based on the world itself, the story, the characters, everything about it, I think this is one of the best worlds in the entire game. I think that in of itself, I really like almost every single story beat that happens. I really like the not anti-imperialist, the dealing with the imperialism vibes, I think is really cool. It's really interesting. It's very cathartic getting to beat up all the imperialists at the end that all really suck. Let me say, there is some bad characters in this, like Mario de Mario and most of the horses and stuff. They're not good, right? No one really cares about them. But Mubu, fantastic. The dogs were funny. The monkeys were all right. They were Spanish people. which is poggers. The French people were French people, which are gross. But design is really cool, and the story beat that design is really just trying to do his best to save the spiral and to make it a good place for everyone. And the people don't want it to be the best for everyone. Is so good. I genuinely think this is the best turn for Design's character, and I'm so excited to see the next world of Wallaroo, which they mention at the end of Novus. So excited to see where this goes. Now let me talk about the bad sides. Novus has a big issue right now with gear farming. The gear in Novus can take hundreds of hours to farm in its completion, and that is absolutely ridiculous. They patched the final fight and made it just so headache inducing for me to try to figure out what it is. I understand now. Basically how it works is there's a % chance to unpolymorph depending on how many school pips the spell has when you kill an enemy. That is absolutely stupid and asinine. How the final fight should work is that the second you kill an enemy with one of the spells while activating the Rochambeau effect, it should unpolymorph you. That is how it should work. It would make the final fight so much better and very much able to be farmed. That is not how it works, and therefore it is not good, in my opinion. The Rochambeau effect is confusing, and that part of the fight, the randomness aspect, is not good. Once they add the pity system to this, once they up the drop rate, I think a lot of this complaint gets removed for me. But here you go. Here's my ranking of the Wizard101 worlds in the year of our Lord 2023. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, let me know your opinions in the comments below. I know that I have some hot takes, and I don't care. I think it's really funny to have hot takes. I think there's a few rankings that can be changed around here. Like I think Mooshu could probably go down a tier if I wanted to. I think Lemuria could go down a tier if I wanted to, but I think this is pretty good firm ranking for me. Let me know what you think in the comments below, but otherwise that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I do plan on making some more videos in the future, but that is it for today. Thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next video. Adios.